Hi, I am absolutely thrilled to be here with Meredith O'Shaughnessy of Meredith Bespoke.
Thank you.
Now, you have worked in the entertainment and events industry for many, many years. I know that you started off on the club scenes, the club scene, and then you got involved working with people having corporate parties. I know that you work with celebrities. I know that you've worked with big brands from elite models through to Lamborghini. And I know that you're a jet setter because every time I speak to you, you're busy travelling around the world. If you're not at a film festival, you're at something else. So tell me a little bit about how did you first of all get involved in the whole world of events? How did it happen?
Well, it was many moons ago now when I was a student. I was studying engineering and material science, which was not nearly as glamorous as a lot of people I think of the industry that I'm in now is. And I realised that going out was a lot cheaper if you were working in the industry rather than just kind of going out yourself. And I loved it. I loved being around people. I loved organising things. I loved the logistics of things, putting things together. So I started working in large-scale nightclubs in London. And worked my way up. I mean, I started at the Coach-Check and went on to do the Door, and then managing really kind of prestigious venues, including the Roof Gardens, Katy Perry, China White, to name but a few.
Wow, so I guess the wonderful thing about that is that you understand events from the bottom up, from the top down. Because you've been there, you've been on the Coach-Check, you know the experience. I remember one of the things you were saying to me recently is one of the first things is that you're always looking at events from the perspective of the customer. So you're walking in and you can walk into a room like this and you know how you want an event to kind of look. I mean, is that the result of years of experience? Is it a natural flair for it? Is it a combination of all those things?
Well, there's certain logistical things which are common sense, and I think unless you've operated under many, many venues, many different styles, that you really wouldn't necessarily understand. Things like where you put a Coach-Check, having enough toilets, making sure there's enough room for everybody, understanding if you need parking, if there's certain clients have specific requirements, and I think that comes with experience and a certain amount of kind of natural common sense. I am also really keen with the events that I do to make sure that the staffing is done correctly. There's not superfluous people hanging around with nothing to do, or kind of on the opposite side that you have enough people to do everything that's required.
What you're
the atmosphere.
Well, what you're saying is really wonderful. And one of the things that I remember once years ago having to be responsible for a huge conference and realising just how much there is involved in an event. And I think that people who coordinate events, I take my hat off to them because there are just so many logistics. And I guess what's interesting in your work, I mean, these aren't just everyday events. These are huge events. They're for huge corporates. I mean, you've worked with huge corporates, huge household names, luxury brands, and you're managing all of these kind of logistics, and you and the team that you're working with. I mean, that must be extraordinary. I mean, is it fun? Is it scary? I mean, tell us a little bit about that.
It is fun. I mean, I naturally fell into the luxury brands industry. I think that's something that a lot of people try and achieve. And lots of people ask me, they say, well, how did you end up dealing with luxury brands? And actually, I think it wasn't a conscious choice. It was just a decision about the levels of quality I require for myself. And I do things that are fun for myself, enjoyable, I suppose, more than just fun. And I also try to emulate styles of the people, try and do events with people that I would maybe spend time with, or the people that are around me, and it just so happened to be luxury brands. And so when you see it from that point of view, it isn't as daunting as some people might think, because all you're trying to do is provide the best quality at all times. And when you have that as a benchmark, then everything else falls into place. It really just sets a standard for everything, and everything else is just naturally follows from that.
And I would imagine, I mean, one of the things I want to talk a little bit about is that when people come to you and are wanting to hold an event, I guess that some of the brands who you work with, they do events all the time. They're very clear, they know what they're looking for, and they come to you and they just know that you can kind of help them and fulfill them as far as that's concerned. But tell me a little bit about when you're dealing with a company, again, it's a prestigious company perhaps, they're thinking about an event, but then they need to consult with you. Tell me a little bit about what is it that makes a great event. So you've got somebody and they say, look, Meredith, we've got an event, we've got all of these people, we're wanting something that's great. Tell me what are the first things you need to find out in order to turn their idea or to develop their idea into a reality. Talk me through that.
Well, I mean, people come to us at all sorts of different levels. So they either might come to us just with a concept or an idea. They might have a launch that they need to do, or they might have something that they need to particularly celebrate.
Yeah.
And we can come on board at that level and create entire concepts for them, source venues for them, put in staffing, come up with, you know, the little bit of je ne sais quoi that they might be looking for, or even if they don't know they're looking for, we can suggest it to them. Or we can step in at a later stage, and when something is maybe at kind of more of a conception stage, then we can come in and just kind of add a little bit of something on top. When people come to us at the very beginning, that's the most exciting, because it really gives us a chance to really investigate the idea and really present a range of options to them. So what I like to do is to sit down with the client and really just ask them, how do you see it? What do you want? When you walk in the party, what are you seeing?
And I think this is interesting when you're talking about that, because I know when we were talking about a particular event, I mean, one of the first things you said, well, actually, how would you ideally like this event to look? How grand would it be? And it's really lovely because you give the client the scope to explore.
I always think big,
yeah.
And then, you know, if there are restrictions in terms of budget or location or some certain requirements, then we can scale back or adapt. But I think if you think of your wildest dreams, then you can always integrate elements of that, even if maybe there are some restrictions on it. And it also gives me the best idea to try and think, what does somebody really want?
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because people often, they can give you words, try to describe a design. You can try and describe it, but if they can really show you what they want, then you can really get a sense of what it is they're after.
And that's going to mean that they really do get the event that's really right for them. And so I get the feeling that over a period of time that I get a sense of that people aren't just coming to you, just helping with the event. It's almost as though from that you really understand them and them as a brand. And I know that one of the things that you also do is that sometimes you work with particular brands, perhaps they're trying to promote a particular brand, a particular product. I get the feeling that almost one has led to the other. Is that right? Is that how those things have come about? Because I can understand that's such a link, because you understand them as an organisation, or as a business, or as a brand, and therefore you've got a sense of who they are, what they're about, and how they're trying to present their product.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think working, certainly kind of focusing within the London kind of events industry, but also we also do events internationally, gives us a really broad scope in terms of what we can offer clients. So it doesn't just need to be a party, it can be an introduction of a product to a certain demographic of people, it could be linking with a magazine, so a press campaign for them. There's all sorts of things, and we work with some of the best companies in the world to try and create the experience that the client wants.
And that sounds to me, that's the bespoke bit, I guess, about Meredith Bespoke, isn't it? It sounds as though what you do is you really do look at where they're starting on the event or whatever it is, and then you can have fun and really begin to explore what are the elements, and then I get the feeling that then you bring together the team from all these expert teams and partners and organisations to create the right event for them.
I mean, one of my mottos is that I believe that anything you want is 2 phone calls away. So if a client comes to me, even with the craziest suggestion, you know, we want an elephant walking through the event or something, I believe that within 2 phone calls I'll be able to speak to somebody who would be able to tell me whether that's possible and we can make that happen.
Well, this is really exciting. I mean, before we close, and I've been enjoying this interview so much and chatting to you so much, tell me a little about what have been some of your favourite events. And I guess it must be really difficult. You don't necessarily need to say the clients or whatever, but what are some of the things that have for you been some of the most joyful things that you've been involved in? Because, I mean, just sometimes when I'm speaking to you, one minute you're away abroad at a film festival, then the next minute you're looking at venues and so on. It must be a really fascinating life, but tell me something a little bit about some of your favourite events, or perhaps even what for you makes a great event. Answer that how you like.
I really like creating events where you have clients that have an idea in their head and then you make it happen beyond their expectations. That really is really fulfilling. So there's heavily themed events are great. I did a doctors and nurses party for a client where in her mind it was just had a theme of a hospital, and we really went to town. We found a company where we could buy medicine bottles, and we had cocktails from some of the top bars in London. We had the bartenders come in and make cocktails, and we sealed them up in medicine bottles so that the clients could open them up. We found a props hire company that only did medical props, so they had an X-ray Rasheed. I mean, it was excellent, and everybody had a fully immersive experience, which was incredible. But there's also the even large-scale corporate events, or things where people might think it was slightly less kind of fun and wacky can be really interesting. I did an event with a client where we had a live feed from the Russian space station, which is terrifying because you can imagine that it might not work, but it actually kind of worked incredibly well, and that was very satisfying as well in a completely different way.
And that's interesting what you said there, because I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I was looking at the blend of clients you've worked with, and there's some fantastic and really exciting clients from the Russian space program through to luxury cars, brands like Lamborghini, through to modelling agencies, and through to corporates, and through to some, to more kind of traditional businesses and live businesses. Does that make it fun, the kind of variety of kind of businesses that you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one common theme with all the clients we work with is their luxury brands. They consider themselves to be luxury brands. They're considered by other people to be luxury brands because it means that there's a certain level of quality that they demand, which we enjoy giving them. And I think that is a common thread. And that means, the great thing is that there's a huge range that we have. We have access to it. It means there's lots of different things that we can play around with, but also the idea that we can integrate kind of concepts or link up clients with each other that might
and I think that sounds really exciting. I think that particularly bearing in mind how brands operate and particularly people, I guess, are trying to raise awareness of their brand and raise awareness of their brand for new audiences. It's really interesting the way that you work bringing these things together, which means that when you talk about you're doing an event here and there's a PR and the media, and presumably that really adds a real extra level of value to your clients. So imagine that lots of people just see an event as a standalone, whereas I get the feeling that, and I know that when we've worked on an event, you're always kind of thinking, well, what about this, which makes it far richer and perhaps actually helps that business to really think about that in the round of how that event sits with what their overall strategic objectives are.
Yeah, I mean, certainly for events where it's a launch or it's something which they want to highlight a product, I think it's really important to understand the synergy of the different partners you might bring on board for that event, but also what the resonance of it is. So where it's held, what the press kind of response will be to that, what follow-on events you can do, can it be something that can be created? It's an annual event, can it be built upon? Is it a standalone? Where is it? Can it be adapted? And having all those different options means that really you're providing a client with more than just an event brief. You're providing them with kind of an all-round solution to something that they're coming to you with. So.
Wonderful. I just want, before we close, I just want to ask you a couple of other things, because I know that that's not all you do. And one of the things, of course, is that you run your own high-end concierge service. Yeah. And I can see there's a big link, because lots of these kind of clients, they're high achievers and they need all sorts of help. Tell us a little bit about that and how that emerged. And that's your other business, so O'Shaughnessy and Co. That business.
Yeah.
Is that right? Tell us a little bit about how all that started.
So O'Shaughnessy & Co. really came off the back of when I had left the last venue that I was working in. I had a lot of clients that I was looking after. A lot of clients requested me specifically to when they came down. And they still turned to me after I stopped working for the venue, and they were calling me and saying, Meredith, can you organise this and can you organise that? And mainly it would be things like restaurants or club tables. And
but
so
presumably it could be private jets and it could be this up to source.
Yeah, I mean, it started off at that, and then it kind of expanded into private jets, islands, villas, and again it's yachts. Again, it's anything that's a kind of luxury brand, but it can also be an excellent birthday cake for their daughter, something that's really unusual.
And presumably it's that these people are busy, or they just value somebody else who knows, or just knows how to get the best of them because they're dealing with it all the time. Is that what?
We present to them, or we present to our clients the new, the unusual, the fresh. It's something that they maybe hadn't been exposed to or don't have access to. So, I mean, it can be something from getting you jumped on the wait list for Hermes bag, or to having, access to the latest venue that's just opened up, or restaurant tables that are unbookable, or again, just the logistics of something which is maybe a little bit complicated. Maybe they've got a client coming to town and they want to have an itinerary for them for the weekend. And we're going to be able to present for them something that's really fresh and new. And again, that links in with our clients we use for events, because we will do events for luxury brands who will be letting us know in advance when they're opening up new venues, when they're presenting new fashion products. So, and we also work very closely, we're very happy to work closely with other concierge companies and we link in together. There's not really any competition.
That's lovely, presumably because then lots of people have different expertise, and it means that again you're able to get the best for your clients. And I know also on that kind of brand things, I know that you've now expanded that. Tell us about one of your passions and one of these. I know that there's a new venture that you've started up. Tell us a little bit about that very briefly before we close.
Okay, so I do have lots of interests, and my friends and colleagues often laugh at me, myself particularly, because I'm always coming up with new ideas and things that I think that would be fun, and I like to create experiences that I think that people would enjoy. And so my latest venture is Ooh La La Macaroons, which are the UK's first macaroon and martini workshop.
And for those who aren't familiar with macaroons, just tell us what they're about.
Well, they're French little bites of deliciousness.
Right.
So they are meringues based with almonds, with ground up almonds, and then they're sandwiched together. And they're very popular at the moment. There's been a big kind of resurgence in them across America and France and in the UK. But we're the first macaroon and martini workshop. So people get to come along and they get to make their own. They get to make martinis. We're doing them in some really prestigious venues around London.
I'm assuming it's quite fun. It's a good way for people to socialise and to connect and to entertain and so on. And I know that things are already taken off. I know that's a lot of media interest. So I just want to thank you very much for your time. I'm going to turn off the camera and leave you to smile. But I just want to wish you all the best with all the fantastic work around the events and entertainment and industry. And I bet you it must be quite a black book with all those kind of
Yes, it's all mine.